Well, Jim, another executive playing musical chairs and singing the same tune, independently wealthy, trying to put together a deal for his own thing, wanted to buy the company. Lots of stories around there, but Big Scott D'Amore has been fired from AEW, he wishes. Fired from TNA Impact or TNA, whatever it officially is at this moment. They have parted ways with the man a lot of people think is responsible for the resurgence of TNA over the last few years.
Well, and we laugh, but look how it was. It has apparently gotten better because it couldn't hardly get much worse. But again, it's the same thing with Scott D'Amore and Riho. You know, were they a couple of things? Did they get ideas from each other? The story now is out of the blue, out of nowhere. Scott D'Amore, they announced the Anthem people in Canada there. Anthem is the name of their big overlord company.
The Aspers.
The Aspers. They're the owner. They have aspirations. They're the owners of Access TV and TNA Impact Wrestling and the Fight Network and I don't know, a couple of buggy whip factories, whatever. Big the curling industry owes a lot to the Aspers, I'm pretty sure, up there. But anyway, out of the blue, they say, oh, Scott D'Amore is done. He's no longer with us. And he's being replaced by some unknown civilian that works for Anthem, an executive. And first of all, when they it's automatically a reason for mass panic because every time that a real world executive is put in charge of a wrestling company, shit goes south fairly quickly because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to speak the language. They don't know how to deal with the people. It's always a disaster. But in this case, they not only are doing that, but also they've done it when we haven't been watching them because I gave up on the thing quite a while back when they were doing murder mysteries and putting people in other dimensions and then bringing the dead back to life or whatever the fuck. It was all right. And they got so far off the radar that who gives a shit? And we only got so much time. But everybody that watches the thing has said, well, their shows have been better. And we laughed at them for changing the name, but apparently Impact had sucked so bad that TNA was the nostalgic thing that they liked better, even though they made fun of it at the time. So they've been doing better shows. Their business has been picking up. D'Amore, for whatever else you can say, he's been dedicated to this thing. Everybody says, oh, he's fucking worked his ass off and he's tried to do whatever he can do to rebuild this moribund enterprise after the Carter era and all the other shit that went on. And then they just fire him. And then when they have a call with the talent or whatever the Zoom thing or whatever they did, they led by lying, saying that Scott had stepped down when everybody knew that that was not the truth, that they'd fired him.
They should have led with D'Amore, no more.
D'Amore has been demoralized. But basically, it's the same situation that we're kind of starting to hear now, that D'Amore had been upset because he was doing these things and that thing and the other thing, but he couldn't get a bigger budget. He couldn't get them to hire certain people. He was getting overruled on things, and he had made an offer to try to buy the company from Anthem. Because, and I don't know whether this is known, I think D'Amore's family, since I was working down there, it has been involved in a big construction company.
Construction, that's right. He's a big shot on the construction side, I hear.
Yes, and so that's what, he's, in the past, he's done that in some cases when he decided, I'm going to stay away from wrestling. He's worked his family's business. They've got money. But they wouldn't even deal with him on making an offer, or whatever, trying to sell him the company. And then they just, basically, I guess it had got to the point where they couldn't live together anymore and they had to decide to.
The rumor that went around wasn't even about his family's money. I think the rumor that went around was he had a note from a bank.
Well, yes. I mean, he has money. His family has started a business. I'm
Right.
sure he's got a significant portion of that business. I'm not saying he's like Tony Khan and using his dad's allowance or whatever. I'm saying that yes, they have other business besides wrestling, and the D'Amore family and Scott could potentially afford this. He had a letter of credit from a bank. He had some way of proving that he had backing or whatever. They wouldn't talk to him about it. And but now they're trying to paint the move as positive from the Anthem side, and that they've decided to take the company and completely integrate it into all the other Anthem businesses. That means they weren't doing that till now. That means, what kind of fucking morons are you? If you've got one business that you own wholeheartedly outright, and you have other businesses that could help give that business publicity or help it in any way, shape, or form establish or expand its business, wouldn't you work together on those things if you own them all? That's just so they're saying by now making this change to do all of this good stuff we're going to do to make Impact bigger. We reveal that we've just figured out we've owned this thing for about 6 years and we could have done this the whole time. What? What did you make of that explanation?
I think something about this whole thing smells funny, and hopefully Thank You Scott, which was trending briefly, ages better than Thank You Vince did. Because the reason we're being given makes no sense. Apparently D'Amore knew things were going to change, so he made an offer to buy the company. When you don't want to sell something, it's kind of weird when all of a sudden someone comes up to you like, I'm ready to buy it. That's a little weird. The timing of this is weird considering not only they rebranded as TNA, but he's been front and center as their biggest cheerleader. For good reason. He's the executive, but really out there doing interviews, talking about it. I saw a promo he did in the ring. Have to say, was very passionate. So all of a sudden he's gone. They give conflicting reasons about to why he's gone. He stepped down. No, he was asked to leave.
Well, and besides that, this whole idea of, okay, the reason for this is we're putting this other executive from a place other in another department in Anthem in charge of the company so that he can make sure that all of our companies are working together to fully promote TNA wrestling and get, integrate their stars on our other television programs in other genres. Great. What does that have to do with Scott D'Amore, the experienced guy that's got it this far, continuing to run the company while you integrate their product into all your other? It's like, oh, well, we could have done this all along, but goddamn D'Amore was running the thing. What? That does not make sense.
The way this was all done, and based on various things in the past that were talked about, you have to wonder if maybe there's anything else going on behind this, that all of a sudden, right now, where they have a working relationship with WWE, which may be more important than everything else they have going on. They got one of their champions on the Royal Rumble, and she looked good in there. They didn't just dump her out right away. They talked about her being in the other company. So there's something going on there. For right now, for Scott D'Amore to be pushed out, it has to be more than he was frustrated, so he wanted to buy the company, so they fired him. That doesn't make too much fucking sense.
Well, maybe they confused him with Rossi Ogawa.
He wanted them to have a bigger budget, so he said, I'm going to give you money. I want to buy the company. They said, we don't want to do that. And he said, okay, I'll go back to work. And they said, you're fired.
Yes. That's a natural progression of events right there. I can't see it happening any other way.
Has Scott D'Amore said anything? Public? I guess he hasn't. I haven't seen a quote from him.
I haven't. No. Have not heard of any statement, but
we'll have to find out. I mean, we're saying he got fired. They say he stepped down. Did they force him to sign a resignation for one reason or another? That's one of the things we have to find out.
But no, the story that I was hearing is that, again, they knew that it was, both sides knew that it was coming, that they were coming to an impasse, and it was just a case of not sure when it was going to be announced to the public, but then as soon as it was announced it's D'Amore is done, then D'Amore stepped down to the talent. And that was not the way it was phrased initially. And they were trying to soften the blow, and a lot of people are pissed off because, again, unnamed executives who have never been in charge of anything meaningful involving wrestling are now in charge of all these people's fucking futures.
Well, it gets worse. According to The Observer, nothing was said about creative, but there was a belief that Tommy Dreamer, who was second in command, would be in charge. But neither he nor anyone else was told that.
Woo!
Dreamer, Gail Kim, and R.D. Evans were the key people with D'Amore on the creative end.
When Laurinaitis got mad at me one time in the summer of 2005 before the big blow up, they put Dreamer in charge of OVW booking for about 4 weeks before I came back.
I remember that TV.
Figure it out. And my God, it almost put us all out of business. Nobody knew what to say. Even the boy, Danny Davis, said, "What?" I asked Danny, I said, "What the fuck is going on with this TV?" I said, "I don't know." Tommy learned all the bad habits from Heyman. Shoot everything, have it in your mind, and we'll do extensive post-production. The only problem is Heyman was the only one because of that large bulbous head that had enough room in his mind to have all that in his mind.
Well, back to this, Scott D'Amore gone from TNA, and again, as we just said, not just the person running it, but head of creative. So whatever this move is, it's something that definitely changes the dynamic of everything there.
I remember Dutch Mantell calls me on the phone about 2 months after I joined TNA in 2006. And that's when D'Amore had been on the creative team before with, I think, Jeremy Borash and out on 2 or 3 people along with Dutch Mantell and Jeff Jarrett. And Dutch opened the call with, "Well, Dixie just fired everybody on the creative team except me and Jeff." I said, "Well, that's a good start. Because that there needed to be fewer instead of more." And then he said, "And she just hired Vince Russo." And I said, "Well, I quit." And then that began that whole thing. But so we've told that story, but we've glossed over the reason why. As I was told, as I recall, that they fired everybody else besides Dutch and Jeff on the creative team, and Scott D'Amore led that crew that was fired, is because they caught D'Amore trying to take the company over from him. This was 2006.
Really? I don't know about that.
Yes, it's some way or another. Either D'Amore was trying to go behind Jeff's back to Dixie, or badmouth, whatever the fuck, but he wanted to run the fucking thing then. It's almost 20 years ago. And then a year later, they brought him back, I guess, maybe not a year, maybe about a year. I don't know. The aficionados of the company can look up that timeline. And I asked Dutch, I said, "Well, why are they bringing D'Amore back? We tried to steal the company." He said, "Well, he promised he wouldn't do it anymore."
Oh, my God. Bob Roop.
Well, more like Ronnie Gossett. Ronnie Gossett sold Nick's territory and ended up working for Jerry Jarrett years later. He promised he wouldn't sell mine.
What do you think? I mean, what do you think he'll do with this big budget he has to buy a company? Will he buy the NWA? Will he buy Women of Wrestling?
Well, there's nothing worth buying because everything that exists is where it is. You couldn't.
But isn't
if
it,
you
it's
bought,
like the WCW thing, though. Like WCW was being sold, but you needed the TV. If the company that owns TNA is the company airing TNA, what are you really buying? The archive? You're not buying a TV spot.
You buy an opportunity, son. You're buying the opportunity to go out there and build the whole thing all over again and get it on something else. I mean, maybe the deal was I'll buy the company, just air it. And I'll buy the thing and do everything. Who knows? But there is no wrestling promotion in the world right now available to be bought that's worth buying. Nobody's going to buy the WWE, and it's the only one that's worth anything. AEW, my God, if anybody was to buy it, you'd have to take over the ridiculous fucking talent roster and the overpaid talent and the plethora of contracts and the ridiculous arena contracts that have been signed where you're running arenas that seat 20,000 for 2,000 people and the massive overspending in every element of the fucking company, and you'd never make your money back. And the reputation that here's the number 2 company that draws the same amount of people every week on TV in, And one show does good, the other show does and the other show's rotten. What are you buying if you buy Impact right now? That's a thing that you just said. Unless the company that owns it now sells it to you and still airs the TV, you're buying a fucking wrestling promotion with no television. Ring of Honor, it's part of Tony Khan's collection. He's got it in his memorabilia room and he puts it out on YouTube every once in a while. It doesn't really exist, so that's not worth anything.
Global Force Wrestling.
It's gone. And they fucking erased the tapes. That was real fucking ill will on their part. What other wrestling promotion exists today that anybody could buy and do anything differently with it than what is being done now?
Well, we'll see what happens to Scott.
No, that was a question.
There's no answer.
Think of one.
I can't think of one of any value. No.
Anybody buys one right now, even if they've got unlimited money, what are they going to do with it in the first 2 years? It's going to make it any different than what's gone on.
So use that if you are insistent on being in wrestling. Use that money and start a promotion. Don't buy anything because you have a better chance with low overhead. Start
your own. What the fuck difference is it going to make? You probably ain't going to get anywhere anyway. But at least you wouldn't be just paying however many $1 million for something that's flopped so far already.
Well, as we said before, Damore, no more, but I'm sure you can find him riding around a tractor like a big boy on the construction site.